Thank you for staying with us, and now we get into our final segment right here on Good Morning Kenya, that is Women at the Forefront. And I am more than pleased to be having with me the Director General and CEO, Kenya National Qualifications Authority, that is Dr.Alice Kande. And Dr.Alice Kande is here so that we can have a conversation on verification and recognition of academic qualifications. What questions may you be having on that? Be sure that she will be answering each and every one of those questions. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Vivian.
It is a pleasure to have you here this morning.
A pleasure too.
Maybe we can just begin by first just you giving us the role of the Kenya National Qualifications Authority. Just generally, what is the mandate?
Right. Thank you so much, Vivian, and good morning, everyone. My name is Alice Kande, CEO, Kenya National Qualifications Authority, like you rightly said, and a pleasure to be here to talk about Kenya National Qualifications Authority, and importantly, what we call the National Qualifications Framework. The Kenya National Qualifications Authority is an agency under the Ministry of Education, State Department for TVET. However, our role cuts across. It is not just a role of the State Department for TVET, because the National Qualifications Framework speaks to the entire space of education and training, right from basic to TVET to universities, to industry training, to professional training, anywhere where there's a form of education and training. Then the National Qualifications Authority finds a space, because our role is to ensure that there's harmony, their standards in the way we articulate our qualifications, in the way we regard credibility of qualifications. We are established under the Act of 2014. We call it Kenya National Qualifications Framework Act of 2014, operationalized by regulations of 2025. You would wonder that space. Initially, we had regulations of 2018. But over time, in the course of implementation, we realized that there were gaps that needed to be addressed, and to make sure that we are able to really address the functions as envisaged in the Act. And what is really brought out by those legislative documents is to ensure that as a country, we have what you call a national qualifications framework. And this is a policy instrument, so to speak, that provides for classification of all levels of education and training. And not about all levels. We're talking about, like I said, from basic to the highest level, and all forms of education and training. We're talking about the classroom training, the traditional way of training, getting to class and being taught. We're also talking about any training that you might get informally or non-formally, so that there is no skill or competence that is so acquired that is not certified. And if it is certified, then it finds a way of being recognized within the framework.
And I want us to dwell on that a bit before you continue.
Right.
You know, the skill-based certification. How do you get to recognize, you know, skill-based? How do you recognize skill-based certification? How do you go about that? You know, I have a skill, yes, but I don't have any certificates for it, but I'm really skilled in one way or the other. How do you go about the certification for that?
Very good question, Vivian. Yes, skill-based. And we pride ourselves as a country as one that is so keen on informal acquisition of skills and competences. And for the longest time, that is before we got to what you call the recognition of prior learning policy, we didn't have a mechanism in place to recognize any skill or competence that is acquired outside of the classroom. And of course, never mind that we appreciate that even right now, looking at the transformation that we have within the education and training space, of course, we're looking at skills and competencies. However, in addition to that formal recognition, we're saying you go to class, you're trained, and you get acquainted to an industry, and you get a skill maybe through attachment or internship. Now, there's this bit of where you have a skill. We're glad that as a country, since March of 2024, we have what we call recognition of prior learning policy. And what does it speak to? that we recognize anyone who has a skill or a competence, not necessarily that they have gone to class. If you acquire it through apprenticeship, anywhere, then what you need to do is to ensure that you present yourself to a credible institution. We already have within the framework, we've cascaded it to the institutions that have a legal mandate also to ensure that they implement it, and so they have institutionalized it. And one would be able to present themselves, and they will be guided on how they would demonstrate that they have a skill. So if you have a skill, Vivian, it means that it will not get lost. You will be guided. And if it does not measure up to the requirements of a level of certification, because I was going to say that the framework actually is a 10-level framework, very well articulated in terms of if you're being assessed at what we'd call level 5, craft certificate, then very clear description. We call them KNQA level descriptors, clear learning outcomes. You have to demonstrate that you actually have the competence for that. And so you wouldn't get lost and you wouldn't hit a dead end that now you have been assessed, you've been certified. That certificate you get is a credible certificate as long as it has been issued by a credible institution. However, if an institution finds that you did not meet the requirement to be certified, there's also provision, what you call skill gap. You know, you fill in what you have missed, so you will not be dismissed. So getting back and sending you back to the industry, and you will be able to fill in that which you are missing. And so it is actually facilitative. Yes, Vivian.
All right. And I'd still like to follow up on that. You know, you mentioned you can go to an institution that is accredited and you get to find where you are. So how am I supposed to know what institutions or what programs are accredited? Even for someone who is looking to enroll maybe, how am I able to know if an institution or a particular program is accredited? Is there a way to look that up?
Yes, Vivian, there is a way in which you can be able to know which institutions are accredited and which ones are not. And allow me to take you back. For the longest time, before establishment of the Kenya National Qualifications Authority, I did say that we are established through enactment of an Act of 2014. And of course we know, for years on end, even pre and post independence, we've had education and training for the longest time. And so we've had institutions that are duly accredited or duly legally mandated, but we've also had institutions that have come up and they have not had this legal mandate to probably train, assess and award. And one of the reasons again for the establishment of the Kenya National Qualifications Authority is to ensure that there's a standardized way in which we classify the institutions that have that legal mandate to train, assess and award a certificate. One of the critical roles that we have is to establish what we call a national qualifications database. Now that database contains all the accredited institutions, all the accredited programs that are offered in those accredited institutions. And then it also contains graduates' records. So this is a graduate who's gone through the accredited program, through the accredited institution. And broadly again, allow me to say that we work collaboratively with what we call subsector regulators, because the national qualifications framework, as I explained earlier, it is all encompassing. And so we work from the institutions that are under basic, we work with the TVET institutions, and so for the TVET institution, we work with TVET authority. So you would know that any institution that offers a TVET oriented course. So that is from what you call KNQA level 3 to level 6, which is a diploma. It must first of all be accredited by TVET authority. If it is a university that offers from level 7, that is a bachelor's degree, through to level 9 master's to doctorate, it must first of all be accredited by Commission for University Education. Now, what these accreditation bodies do, and to ensure that they align with the requirements of the National Qualifications Framework, is that they anchor the accreditation framework on what is provided within the National Qualifications Framework. And that is where coherence and harmony and standardization comes in, so that you would find the parameters that TVET authority is using to ensure that they accredit a program. There are parameters that would be acceptable by a university, because Commission for University Education has also used those parameters. They are comparable, they are acceptable, they are speaking to each other. So the graduate coming from this sub-framework of TVET will also seamlessly be able to move to the sub-framework of university. And allow me to also say that also within the sub-framework of industry training, where we have, for instance, National Industrial Training Authority that deals mainly with skills. And of course, we've had NITA for the longest time, even before we had recognition of prior learning. And they were looking at actually just assessing the competencies that one has. So we also have the accreditation framework, of course, also applying within that context, and also professional pathway, because you would find that professional pathway are not so distinct, in as much as you would find that someone would move from say level 2, which in our old system 844 would say KCSE. Right now we have what one would exit at year 12. So if they get that certificate, then they will be able to probably decide to pursue a professional course. Now that professional course must find its way of integrating with the rest of the sub-frameworks. So how would you then know an institution that is accredited? It must first of all be accredited by the subsector regulator. Once it is accredited by subsector regulator, then we get it registered in the National Qualifications database. And also the programs as well. We do not register programs that have not gone through a subsector regulator. And you see, we're speaking the same voice because subsector regulators, TVET authority, NITA, Commission for Industry Education, they are also making reference to the National Qualifications Framework, which is the apex at that point. And so that way we are also able to flag out any program or any institution that may purport to be issuing any level of certification, yet they do not have a legal mandate to do so. And we're appreciative of that kind of very clear architecture that is provided, and glad to see that we're seamlessly and harmoniously working with all those stakeholders, right from subsector regulators to the institutions that are within their purview. If it is the universities, if it is the institutions with the TVET space, if it is the professional examination bodies, we are now connected through the Kenya National Qualifications Framework.
I hear you on that. That is well explained.
Yes.
Now, what would you say are some common irregularities that probably you've gotten to encounter, you know, during these processes? What are the common irregularities?
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Like we would find in any other sector, education space also is also prone to infiltration by players who may want to beat the system that is already established. Most of the reason would be because they don't want to follow the processes that are already laid. You know, for instance, getting back to the earlier question on speaking to how would you know an accredited institution. For the longest time, again, before establishment of the framework, we had so much fragmentation. And it is across board for all the sub-frameworks. Even at lower levels, you'd actually find a school that is purporting to train our youngest of pupils, and they have not been accredited. And getting also to the TVET space as well, you would find that there are institutions that would be mushrooming left, right, center, and they would actually be enticing people to register for the courses. And of course, because you're a country where people are so keen to really learn and get certified and be able to use those certificates, they would definitely get people. So one of the areas that then we find that people really try to beat the system is a bit of going above what you are mandated to do. Because the beauty is that the Constitution allows anyone to practice. You know, if you would want to establish an institution, you have the leeway, even as Vivian, to do so. But you must follow what the law has provided. There are clear criteria that is provided, and you must follow it to establish an institution that would be regarded as one that can issue a credible certificate. But we're glad because now with the legislations in place, and that is really something that has helped this country to be at the forefront. In fact, as we speak, as we talk about implementation of the National Qualifications Framework, which is not a national concept, it is actually a global concept. Within the region, if I would start closer to where we are, within the East African community, we're already working on an East Africa Community Qualification Framework. Within the broader region, if you look at 8 member states of IGAD, we're already working on an IGAD Qualifications Framework, actually already in place. But what you're trying to do is to ensure that the specific countries also have their own NQFs. Within the continent at large, we have what we call the Africa Continental Qualifications Framework. Again, to ensure that we have an umbrella body that supports this acceptability, comparability, and compatibility of our qualifications. Because this issue is actually rampant globally. It is not even a continental issue of where people really want to use fake certificates. I'm sure we've had that everywhere.
Allow me to cut you short. We take a break and then we get back to that conversation. Don't go too far. We'll be back in a bit.
Okay.
The bounty hunters were all killed?
Yes.
These bounty hunters were all at the level of Tapana. I really thought at least one of them would be able to kill Cao Yanbing first.
It really is you. Wow, you're ugly.
I'm wanted now? So you're here to capture me?
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Mashinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with our music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Mashinani, Radani Talent.
Thank you for staying with us. In case you're just joining us, I have with me Dr.Alice Kande, who's the Director General and CEO, Kenya National Qualifications Authority, and we're talking matters verification, recognition, and all of that matters our academic qualifications. Now, before we took that break, you were just touching on, we used to have the challenge of fake certificates, academic certificates, and that is changing now with this, with a way to be able to verify and recognize, whether the certificate is whether it's verified rather. So, just how best are we at that, and have we been able to completely do away with the fake certificates? Or that's a stretch.
Very good question, Vivian. We're probably not yet done because people are very creative, human, really creative, and especially now with technology in place. The way people used to creatively come up with the fake certificates 10, 30 years ago is now different. AI has even made it easier and probably almost impossible to tell which is real and which is authentic and which is not. However, the beauty, again, is that as a country, our solution to curbing this has actually been supported by establishment of what you're talking about today, of the National Qualifications Framework. Remember I said, it is a single integrated framework of all levels of education and training. And a critical mandate that we have, and what actually informed also establishment of this, is that centrally we are able to have all credible qualifications. At a glance, you would be able to click and tell that certificate that you hold, is it credible? Was it issued by an accredited institution? Was that program even accredited? And even you as a holder yourself, can we authentically say that you own that certificate? And that solution lies within the National Qualifications Database. We're glad that with that solution now, and I did say that we work collaboratively with the subsector regulators, we are actually able to flag these out. And gradually, as a country, we shall actually phase it out. I was actually going to say earlier that number of our peer countries within the continent are coming actually to benchmark with us, because it is a great transformative solution. Because the issue of fake and misrepresented certificates, as they are called in other spaces, is actually a global issue. And we must face it, because unfortunately, you would find that someone would move with a fake certificate from Kenya, and they would want to use that fake certificate in South Africa. They would want to use that certificate in the UK. But the beauty is that most of these countries now, we are speaking a common language. Like I said, the issue of qualifications, actually, we look at it in two lenses. From the global lens, where we are guided by already existing conventions and treaties that require that we have a way of trusting qualifications between countries, from one jurisdiction to the other. And the common feature here is a national qualifications framework. So I would tell you that today, if you go to Zambia, go to Seychelles, go to any country, actually within the continent, out of the 55 countries, over 45 have an established national qualifications framework, of course, at various stages of implementation. And what you're doing is to rally behind our people to support that what you carry as a certificate. It actually denotes skill and competence that you have. And importantly, it is a credible certificate. So to answer your question, I can say that as a country, we are quite some miles ahead. First of all, with the establishment of the framework, bringing together all the subsector regulators together, bringing together all the sub-frameworks together as well, and having this centralized database of credible qualifications. And we are glad again because we are seeing a lot of interest from the employers, because we've realized that the ones who are really suffering by reinvesting and really retraining people so that they get credible certificates, and just to ensure that they also don't get people with fake certificates. So a number of them are coming to us, and we are able to help them verify authenticity of those qualifications. So we are actually steps ahead as a country, and we do really look forward to a point where we shall be able to have this mess really dealt with.
Okay, so what I'm getting is, you know, with the use of technology, yes, a lot has advanced, but you're also leveraging on technology to ensure that you're also verifying these qualifications.
Yes.
All right. Now, with emergence of technology, there's also the emergence of things such as AI, you know, and digital skills as well. And I'm sure most of us, or most of the people who are watching me right now will agree with me that we're taking up courses, you know, as we are working towards just improving ourselves day in, day out. We are taking up short courses on AI here and there. How am I able to know, or is there a way to verify on whether the course that I'm taking is actually verified? Is it recognizable? Like, is that something you're also looking into? Because now there are very many programs or courses that we take, short courses that we take online. How to verify whether your certification is verified?
Yeah, very well, Vivian, and a very timely question on the issue of short and technology-driven courses. And I agree with you. There's so much that now technology has done in redefining even the needs of the labor market. You know, from where we sit, we say that we look at the institution that provide graduates as the suppliers, and then we look at the employer side as the demand side. And so what is important is to ensure that there's a connection between the conversation between the supplier and the demand side. And so looking at now what technology has done and what we're doing, and remember I said that the National Qualifications Framework is actually a flexible tool that allows for recognition of any form of training that one may have, whether it is formally acquired, informally, or non-formally. Any context, whether it is a 2-year, 4-year, or 3 months. That's the beauty of it. And allow me to go back and say that the structural foundation of a national qualifications framework is that we are actually able to map any kind of certification. That said, we are working on what we call a micro-credentials framework. It's a micro. So in other words, we are saying, as we focus in having people who are skilled and having a certificate that demonstrates that actually they are skilled, and probably even showing that they are leveraging also technology to move with the digital credentials and certification of any form, then the micro-credentials framework will provide for us a way and a mechanism of recognizing any form of certification, however minute it is, for as long as the employer or the labor market makes meaning to it, finds meaning to it. That means that it could actually be a 2-hour training, it could be a 10 hours training, it could be a 2 months training. As long as the way it's curated, it makes meaning. And you can actually move with that certification and you find a space where you're able to deliver in the labor market. Then that certified skill or competence must find a place within the National Qualifications Framework. So what we are doing currently is to develop the micro-credentials framework. And again, we're so grateful to the government through the Ministry of Education. We were able to get a team, a technical working committee, all encompassing, like I said, representation from all the sub-frameworks of the qualifications ecosystem, from basic education to universities, to the professional space, to the employers themselves, because that is very, very critical, and even partners, development partners as well. We are currently working with the International Labour Organization and also Commonwealth of Learning. They're the ones who are really supporting us in this. And in about 2 months or so, we are looking at finalizing that micro-credentials framework. And that would be a game changer. Because right now you can also tell what our youth are doing currently. I mean, they're not so interested in a 4-year program. I can tell you that for sure. They want to, in as much as one would be doing a 4-year program, you'd find that on the side, someone who is creative will take advantage of the short courses that are probably offered online, some of them even free. But then, from where we sit, we are providing a system that will ensure and assure the employer that you can consider this as a credible certificate. And so we shall be able to find a way of mapping and guiding on what institutions, which spaces do we consider as credible issuers of a certificate, whether it is micro or otherwise. So that is the progress that we have made, and we are so glad that we shall be able to really provide a solution that is so current right now to the labor markets.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And I want to look at the employer side. So there's a job interview that is happening. People have applied, right? So when they receive these certifications or certificates from different job applicants, how are they able to, or where do they begin when it comes to verifying whether this certificate is actually credible or not? Is there a way to do that, or rather, how do they get to do that?
Absolutely, very, very important, because like we said, people are so creative, and of course you also find ourselves in a situation where we have so many unemployed youth, especially many unemployed people, and so people would like to use any means to ensure that they get a job, and unfortunately you'd find someone trying to push their way with a fake certificate. And so we are glad that the government again has been very keen in alerting the employers that they need to ensure that they check authentication of the certificates of any person who has applied for a job. And we're glad that that is happening. How does it happen? In our case, there's a service that we call alignment and validation. And what we do is that we are able to verify and guide and advise the employer that this certificate actually, for the level that it has been issued, certified and issued, it actually fits that level. And also that it has been issued by a credible institution and that the program was also accredited. And you, as the person who holds a certificate, you actually went through that course. And remember, we're also talking about the various forms of certification. That includes also those who've been assessed through recognition of prior learning. And being a new concept, we are also very keen to ensure that people do not ride on the newness of a system that is being just implemented to also get fake certificates in that space. So any form of certification that has been issued, it goes through the system. We have an online portal that is very, very easy to use, and one would actually just upload the certificates that you have, and you will be able to take it through the process, and we will issue a confirmation that yes, this is well aligned at this particular level, and so, you know, this person can be considered, or for whatever reason one would want to use it. Some people would want to use it for progressing to higher levels. But also allow me to speak briefly that we also look at mapping qualifications that have been acquired from beyond our boundaries or from foreign awarding bodies. Some of them are actually here, but they give a different system of education. But then we also have to guide and map them in the national qualifications framework. So for instance, a simple one, say, for instance, a GCSE that goes until either year 11 or year 13. We are able to map them in the framework and guide. If one exits at year 13, what does that mean? What is an institution supposed to decode from this so that they know where do they admit the student with this certificate? So basically we are able to provide that. We are able to align any form of certification as it is and validate it and map it in the framework and provide guidance on where exactly does it fit within the framework and also confirmation on whether it is credible or not credible.
Yeah,
Thank
you've
you.
actually answered my next question. It was on the same, you know, for someone who studied abroad, when they come back to the country, will it be difficult for them to know where am I supposed to be placed? But you've answered that very nicely. I want us to go back to, or to get back to something you had also mentioned as we finalize on our conversation, where you had mentioned this is not just a Kenyan thing. You are working towards, you know, it's global, and you're working towards just coming together with bodies from across the continent and the globe at large. So if you can just finalize by speaking on that, will this be easier for even a Kenyan to be able to join the job market anywhere else across the board?
Absolutely, and very well said, Vivian, because a key role of the National Qualifications Framework is to ensure that any certificate that is deemed credible, and of course in our case may be registered in the National Qualifications Database, is actually acceptable in any space where it finds itself. And that is why I was saying that establishment and implementation of National Qualifications Framework is not a national concept. It is actually a global concept. And why we have National Qualifications Framework is to facilitate mobility of skills and labor, and most importantly, that the holder of that certificate finds meaningful engagement using that certificate that they have. And so mobility is actually a global concept, and we find our borders actually have become very, very fluid currently. And so what we have are multi-layered, what we call ecosystem, and guided. We look at it in two ways, at a global level and also maybe continental and regional. We have what we call conventions, like we have legal instrument at that global level. We have what we would call within the region like a DIS convention within the African space. We also have the Global Convention on Higher Education, and all this is supported now on this other lower lens of what to look at the technical architecture, where we have the National Qualifications Framework. So within the national space now, we get to get these National Qualifications Framework and authorities that are implementing, subscribing and supporting those regional, continental, and global conventions. And the purpose of those conventions is basically to enhance trust in qualifications. But then not just trust that I just get a qualification from Ghana, from Nigeria, from South Africa, I just accept it. That is why we have this concept of national qualifications framework, because the foundation, the underpinning of that is actually common. If you look at how we've established the national qualifications framework in Kenya, and how, for instance, Zambia, Seychelles, South Africa have established theirs, you'd actually see that we kind of peers. We are sisters, because the essence is the same. And so as a country, we are so glad because we have done a number of milestones in facilitating this mobility. First of all, through having the national qualifications framework within the national space well established and well anchored, speaking to the entire space. And then its acceptability at regional level, at continental level. We are very active, for instance, within the continental space with what we call Africa Continental Qualifications Framework. And gladly, again, because of the solidness and firmness and well articulation of our qualifications ecosystem, we are leading jointly together with South Africa Qualifications Authority and Zambia Qualifications Authority, and steering the effective implementation of what we call ACQF, the Africa Continental Qualifications Framework. And we're getting all these of our countries. We want to be there, all of us, the 55 of us, as a common solid voice, saying that we are able to understand and accept qualification. So that if you move with your level 6 diploma to South Africa, you move with it to Europe, to UK, it will be accepted for that level. Because now, being anchored in the Africa Continental Framework, it also speaks to the global qualifications framework. And so this is a very, very important tool. You'd also know that it also speaks to the protocol on free movement of persons through implementation of Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and which Kenya we are very, very keen to support. You would know there's a lot that is happening in supporting people to move. And so we find that a certificate is actually a very critical anchor that would help you to fit in anywhere. Right. And so very, very important for it to be accepted anywhere it finds itself.
Very well put. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Kande. It was a pleasure having you here, and thank you for just shedding light on this very needed and important conversation. This is where we put a cap to today's Good Morning Kenya. Thank you so much for your time, and do enjoy the rest of your viewing. My name is Vivian Ndegwa. Goodbye.